Today we're going to talk more about the 1970s Speedway riders who passed away. But first we want to talk about how glorious the 1970s was in Speedway. It was an amazing time, and it was just a great time in Speedway history where they had some of the great Speedway riders. And today we're going to talk about some of the former great 1970s Speedway riders who passed away. But the 70s was great. You had the castor oil in the air. They were burning the nitro, methane fuel, made those bikes run fast. And there was just a lot of characters in the 1970s. Many are still alive today. Some have passed away. And today we're going to talk more about those riders who passed away. And first, we're going to start with the Rocket, Rick Woods. Rick Woods was known as the Huntington Beach Rocket. He was an amazingly smooth rider. Rick Woods won the first United States Speedway Championship at the Revival at the Whiteman Stadium in 1968. He made a name for himself, and that name carried through to the Costa Mesa Speedway in 1969, and he won two more United States Speedway Championships in 70, 72. And he was just an amazing rider. He had a lot of talent. And Rick Woods was a good rider. And he just knew how to twist that throttle for sure. He was smooth. I remember watching Rick Woods race when I was just a young boy. And he was just so smooth around the Speedway track. I used to just be amazed at how steady and how smooth a guy could ride that Speedway bike. And Rick Woods was definitely in control. He was a hard charger, but he was really good. And when he was younger, as he got older, like most Speedway riders, they do slow down a little bit. But Rick Woods he was a classic, was a legend. And Rick Woods was definitely a great rider. He died of like cancer or something about 10 years ago. And his brother Gene Woods had an event for him to raise money. And he had his final ride at the Industry Hill Speedway. It was just an amazing story with Rick. And it's very sad his ending. He died like that because Rick Woods had so much to offer the Speedway world. And he just was a good person. Most people liked him, not all. There's some people that didn't like him. But Rick Woods was considered one of the heroes of the modern day Speedway. Next, we're going to talk about Phil Moon and Irwin Moon. They were both Speedway racers and referees. They were beloved while they were riders, and they were hated by many as referees. They were both good men, and Irwin raised some nice boys, and Irwin was a tough referee. Do you remember Irwin Moon? He was the father of the Larry and Phil Moon. And I didn't know much about Larry Moon, and I'm not sure if Larry's still alive. If you know Larry's alive still or passed on, please let me know. But I know that Phil had passed away a couple years ago. I knew some people that were lived next door to Phil. And they always said nice things about Phil. They said Phil was a great guy. And I remember Phil as a little 12-year-old boy in the pits. Phil was always nice to me. He was always signing autographs. He was a kind-hearted man. That was Phil Moon. And his father, Larry, he was the referee. I didn't know him much as a Speedway rider, but I watched him race a few times. He wasn't particularly a hot Division I rider, but he was a good man, and he worked hard as a referee. I think Irwin was known as a referee more than a Speedway rider, and he was a fair referee, although not everyone agrees with the referee's decisions, as we know. But Irwin Moon made the 1970s exciting with his refereeing after his Speedway days were done. And Phil Moon wasn't the best Speedway rider, but he was one of those guys that he was just a solid individual. he was a good person. And Phil was a nice guy. And like I say, he passed away a few years ago. And I heard Irwin had passed away before, but I'm not sure exactly about Larry, the brother of Phil. So I can't report on that. But the Moons were outstanding people. And rest in peace, Phil and Irwin Moon. Next, we have Jim Gresham. He was the brother of Stevie Gresham. And Jim Gresham, he raced in the early days. He was an early 1970s rider, and he was a solid rider. You know, Jim went ahead and he raced in Europe for a little bit. He joined the American team, and he was on the Bakersfield Bandits, I believe. And when I raced in Bakersfield, I had won a handicap main event once, and Jim was in the background laughing as I was kissing the trophy girl. And Jim was just a nice guy. You know, he had that personality. I think he came up to me and congratulated me. And Jim Gresham was just a great guy. I heard he had passed away in an accident, a freak accident. He was changing a tire or something, and the jack slipped and he passed away. But Jim Gresham was a solid D1 rider when he was younger. And he was just a fun-loving guy. And we're so sad about his passing. And Steve Gresham was a great guy and had a great brother in Jim Gresham. And we tragically lost Jim Gresham on an accident. And we say rest in peace, Jim Gresham. Another early days Speedway rider who had passed was Bruce Hazer. I had a chance to hang out with Bruce a few times at the Costa Mesa Speedway. His daughter was Venus and was married to Buck Blair for a while. And Bruce Hazer was a good guy. I'm still good friends with Greg, his brother. But Bruce Hazer was just a good, solid D1 rider. He raced at the Whiteman Stadium, and he raced early days in 1969, 70s at the Costa Mesa Bull Ring. And Bruce Hazer was really a gifted Speedway rider. And he was a good man, hanging out with Bruce at the Speedway a few times. He was just a nice guy, very kind, very respectable, just a good human being. That's Bruce Hazer. And I'm not sure exactly how he passed away, but I heard that he had passed away, and we're very deeply saddened at the passing of an early day Speedway great, and that's Bruce Hazer. Lastly, we have Harland Bass. You know, Harland was a senior member of the Bass brothers. Harland is the person who got the Steve and Mike Bass into Speedway at the Whiteman Stadium. And Harland Bass, he raced Speedway forever. I think his number was like 82 or something. And he lived a nice, long life, Harland Bass. And he was just a senior member of the Bass family. And he was a good guy. He purchased the JP that Mike and Steve Bass shares at the Whiteman Stadium. And Harland Bass was always a regular at Speedway. He just was one of those early day greats. He was one of those legends that just recently passed away in the past year or so. Like I say, he lived a long life, and we definitely respect the life of Harland Bass and all the good things that he did for the Bass brothers and for Speedway. Rest in peace, number 82. That was Harland Bass.